80% of rust damage starts before you ever see it, underneath, in the seams, behind the panels. By the time it's visible, dealers have already won. $2,000 to treat something a $20 compound stops permanently. One Saturday. Done. Japanese coastal drivers figured this out 30 years ago. Salt air, brutal winters. Same cars still on the road today with original panels, original paint, zero treatments from a dealer, ever. Today I'm exposing exactly how, step by step, what works, what makes it worse, and the one method that stops rust from the inside out permanently. Number 15, the rubberized undercoating death trap. We are starting with the most destructive, high-profit scam in the automotive industry. When you buy a new or used truck, the finance manager will heavily pressure you into buying a specialized rubberized undercoating for $800. They spray a thick, black, tar-like substance over the entire bottom of your vehicle, claiming it will seal out moisture and salt forever. They are selling you a death sentence for your frame. Here is the mechanical reality. Your car's steel frame constantly flexes as you drive over bumps. That thick rubber coating does not flex perfectly with the steel. Within 1 year, the rubber dries out and develops thousands of microscopic cracks. When you drive through a puddle or heavily salted slush, that corrosive salt water forces its way through the cracks and gets permanently trapped between the rubber coating and the raw steel frame. Because the thick rubber blocks all airflow, the water can never evaporate. The salt water actively eats the steel from the inside out, completely hidden from your view. Never apply rubberized or asphalt-based hard coatings to your car. But if you think trapping water with rubber is bad, wait until you see the electrical scam dealerships use to steal thousands of dollars from terrified drivers. Number 14, the electronic rust module scam. If you decline the rubber undercoating, the dealership will try to sell you the ultimate futuristic upgrade, an electronic rust protection module. They charge anywhere from $500 to $1,200 for this tiny plastic box. They wire it to your battery and attach a small metal pad to your chassis. They claim it sends a continuous, low-voltage electrical current through the metal of your car, altering the molecular charge of the steel so it becomes physically impossible for rust to form. It even has a little blinking green LED light to prove it is working. It is a complete, scientifically proven placebo, but your car is not a submarine. It sits in the open air, rolling on 4 non-conductive rubber tires. Because the vehicle is not continuously submerged in an electrolyte bath, the electrical current cannot travel across the body panels. The module does absolutely nothing except drain your battery and light up a green bulb. You cannot stop rust with a blinking light, but people still try to stop it with the most famous blue and yellow can in their garage, which leads to our next massive mistake. But you know what's not a mistake? Liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Do that right now and you'll never regret it. Number 13. The WD-40 prevention myth. Everyone has a can of WD-40 in their garage. The name literally stands for Water Displacement 40th Formula. Because it displaces water, millions of drivers assume that spraying it all over their suspension components and rough with rusty bolts before winter will act as an impenetrable shield against road salt. We tested this on a piece of bare steel. We coated it heavily in WD-40 and exposed it to a simulated winter environment. The fluid initially looked fantastic. It beaded water perfectly. But WD-40 is composed of highly volatile, light aliphatic hydrocarbons. It is designed to penetrate and loosen stuck parts, not to act as a permanent barrier. Because it is so thin, it offers zero physical resistance to the elements. Using penetrating fluid as a rust preventative is like using a paper umbrella in a hurricane. It washes away instantly. But while light oils wash away, heavy paints create an even more dangerous illusion. Number 12, the paint over cover-up. Up illusion, you look under your vehicle and see a patch of brown, flaky rust forming on your lower control arm. You panic. You go to the hardware store, buy a $5 can of glossy black spray paint, and you paint right over the rust to stop it from spreading. Out of sight, out of mind, right? Wrong. You just accelerated the rot. Rust is incredibly porous and holds microscopic pockets of oxygen and moisture. The chemical reaction continues underneath the fresh paint. As steel rusts, it expands to up to 3 times its original thickness. Within 3 months, the expanding rust will literally push the new paint off the metal, causing massive, ugly, bubbling blisters that flake off in your driveway. You cannot suffocate rust with cosmetic paint. You have to kill it chemically, but before you try to kill it, you might try to physically scrub it away. And if you use the wrong tool, you will make the metal completely invincible to chemical treatments. Number 11, the wire wheel. Smear mistake. If you know you cannot paint over rust, the logical next step is to grab a power drill, attach a heavy-duty steel wire brush wheel, and aggressively grind the rust away. You put on your safety glasses, pull the trigger, and grind the rusted frame rail until it turns a shiny, dark black color. You think you have removed the rust, and you are ready to apply a protective primer. You have just committed the wire wheel smear mistake. When you use a high-speed steel wire brush on porous iron oxide, the immense friction and heat do not actually remove the rust from the microscopic craters in the metal. Instead, the wire wheel burnishes and polishes the rust. It literally smears the top layer of the iron oxide into a hard, shiny, impenetrable crust. If you try to apply a rust-killing chemical over burnished rust, the chemical cannot penetrate the hard crust to reach the active oxidation underneath. The treatment will fail, and the rust will return in weeks. Professional Japanese restorers never use high-speed wire wheels for heavy rust. They use low-speed abrasive flap discs, or they use media blasting to physically fracture and remove the rust without polishing it. Scrubbing metal is dangerous, but the way you wash your car in the winter is causing silent devastation. Number 10. The winter car wash paradox. You live in a region with brutal winters. The city covers the roads in corrosive rock salt and liquid calcium chloride to melt the ice. You love your car, so you do what you think is right. You drive it into a heated garage every night, and you run it through the local hot water car wash every single week to blast the salt off. You are actively destroying your vehicle faster than the person who leaves their car buried in a snowbank. Here's the terrifying chemistry of road salt. Solid salt sitting on freezing cold steel does absolutely nothing. The chemical reaction of oxidation requires liquid water and heat to activate. In fact, for every 10 degrees Celsius the temperature rises, the rate of chemical corrosion doubles in speed. When you park a salt-covered car in a heated garage, the frozen slush melts into liquid salt water, and the ambient heat turns your garage into a high-speed chemical reactor. You are actively cooking your frame in a highly conductive electrolyte bath. The Japanese method mandates that if you must wash your car in the winter, you use cold water, and you leave the car outside in the freezing air so the moisture cannot chemically activate. And speaking of hidden moisture, there is a drain hole in your car right now that is quietly filling your doors with an ocean of water. Number 9. The door drain hole suffocation. You open your car door after a heavy rainstorm, and you hear a distinct, heavy sloshing sound. It sounds like there is a fish tank trapped inside your vehicle. Dealerships will charge you $200 to take the interior door panel off and replace the weather stripping. You do not need new rubber, you just need a toothpick. Every single car door is designed to let water inside. The rubber window seals are never 100% watertight. Water runs down the glass, drips inside the hollow door cavity, and is supposed to drain out through 2 or 3 tiny rectangular holes stamped into the very bottom metal edge of the door. Over a few years, road dust, pollen, and tree sap wash down the window and form a thick mud that completely plugs those tiny drain holes. Your door slowly fills up with 5 inches of stagnant rainwater. That water sits directly against the internal steel seams of the door, rotting the metal from the inside out. By the time you see bubbling paint on the outside of your door, the entire bottom structure is gone. Lay on the ground, look at the bottom edge of your doors, and poke a wooden toothpick up into those tiny slots. I have seen a gallon of filthy water pour out of a single door in 10 seconds. Clear the drains. But water trapped in your door is nothing compared to the toxic compost pile hiding behind your wheels. Number 8. The wheel arch compost trap. If you look closely at the front fenders of most modern cars, directly behind the front tires, you will see a black plastic liner. It is designed to stop rocks from chipping the paint, but engineers made a fatal flaw. That plastic liner creates a hidden void between the plastic and the metal fender. Every time you drive through the rain, your front tires launch a high-pressure spray of dirt, dead leaves, and road salt directly up into the tiny gaps behind that plastic liner. Over 5 years, that debris accumulates into a massive, soaking wet compost pile tightly packed against the raw steel of your lower fender and bucket rocker panel. Because it is hidden behind the plastic, it never sees sunlight and it never dries out. It acts like a wet sponge, holding corrosive moisture against the metal 24 hours a day. This is exactly why so many cars have massive rotting holes at the bottom of their front fenders, while the rest of the car looks perfect. The preventative habit is simple. Once a year, remove the 2 plastic clips holding the bottom of the liner, pull the plastic back, and use a garden hose to blast out the pounds of wet, rotting dirt hiding inside. But while the outside of the car rots from dirt, the inside of your car might be rotting from a perfectly clean appliance. Number 7. The AC evaporator floor pan rot. You pull up the floor mats in your car to vacuum, and you notice the carpet underneath the passenger seat feels damp. It hasn't rained in weeks, and you haven't spilled a drink. You ignore it, assuming it is just humidity. 3. Years later, your mechanic puts the car on a lift and tells you the entire passenger side floor pan has rusted completely through, and you can see the pavement from inside the cabin. A $3,000 structural repair. You did not have a rust problem. You had an air conditioning problem. Your car's AC system acts as a massive dehumidifier. It pulls moisture out of the cabin air. That condensation drips into a plastic tray behind your dashboard and drains out through a small rubber tube underneath the car. The carpet feels dry on top, but the foam underneath holds the moisture directly against the painted steel floor pan for years. It rusts the floor from the inside of the cabin outward. If you ever notice a damp floorboard, do not ignore it. Locate the rubber AC drain tube under the car and blow it out with a blast of compressed air. Clearing tubes saves floors. But what do you do when the rust has already started and you cannot sand it away? You turn to chemistry. Number 6. the phosphoric acid rust converter. If you have a patch of deep pitted rust on your chassis, you know that spraying cosmetic paint over it is a disaster. You know that using a wire wheel will just smear it. You need to chemically alter the atomic structure of the metal itself. This is the true professional secret. You go to the hardware store and buy a specialized liquid called a rust converter, which contains a high concentration of phosphoric acid. Here is the chemical wizardry. When you brush phosphoric acid directly onto red iron oxide, it causes a violent chemical reaction. The acid strips the oxygen molecules away from the rust and bonds with the iron. Over 24 hours, it completely converts the red, flaky rust into a rock-hard, jet-black substance called iron phosphate. Iron phosphate is entirely inert. It cannot rust, it cannot spread, and it is completely immune to moisture. You have literally transformed the disease into a permanent shield. Once the metal turns black, you can safely apply primer and paint over it, knowing with absolute certainty that the rust is dead forever. Chemistry kills active rust, but how do you protect fresh, clean metal from ever rusting in the first place? You steal a secret from the maritime industry. Number 5. The sacrificial zinc anode trick. If you look at the hull of a multi-million-dollar oceanic cargo ship, or the submerged concrete pillars of a massive suspension bridge, you will notice large blocks of raw metal bolted directly to the steel. Those are sacrificial anodes, usually made of pure zinc. Here is the science of galvanic corrosion. When salt water hits steel, it creates an electrical current that steals electrons from the iron, causing it to rust. But zinc is a much more active metal than iron. When you attach zinc to steel, the salt water attacks the zinc first. The zinc willingly sacrifices its own electrons to protect the steel. As long as the zinc is present, the steel physically cannot rust. You cannot bolt heavy zinc blocks to your car, but Japanese mechanics utilize this exact galvanic science using cold galvanizing compound. It is an incredibly heavy aerosol spray paint that contains 93% pure zinc dust. If you have an exposed, clean weld on your chassis, or a newly replaced steel suspension component, you spray it heavily with cold galvanizing compound. Even if a rock chips the coating and exposes the bare steel underneath, the surrounding zinc will sacrifice itself and bleed over the scratch, preventing the steel from ever oxidizing. It is a chemical force field, but zinc spray is only for large surfaces. What about the tiny, delicate threads that hold your entire suspension together? The next one answers that. Number 4. The Japanese marine grease protocol. Any mechanic who works in a snowy region knows the sheer terror of trying to remove a 10-year-old suspension bolt. The threads have rusted completely solid. You put a massive breaker bar on the bolt, pull with all your strength, and hear a loud, sharp snap. The bolt head breaks off, leaving the rusted shaft permanently seized inside the frame. A 20-minute brake job just turned into a 2-day, $500 nightmare involving blowtorches and drill bits. Japanese mechanics operating in the harsh northern island of Hokkaido use a militant protocol to prevent this. It is called the marine grease protocol. Whenever they install a new bolt or remove an old one under the chassis, they heavily coat the exposed threads with synthetic, waterproof marine grease. Standard grease washes away in the rain. Marine grease is specifically engineered for boat trailer wheel bearings that are actively submerged in salt water. It is incredibly thick, highly adhesive, and completely repels water and the road salt. By coating the exposed threads of your alignment bolts, shock mounts, and brake caliper brackets with marine grease, you permanently seal oxygen and moisture away from the metal. 10 years later, that bolt will unthread smoothly with a standard hand wrench. You just save the mechanic's sanity and your own wallet. Greasing bolts is brilliant, but what about the massive hollow steel tubes that make up the actual frame of your truck? Come with me. Number 3. The internal cavity wax injection. Most drivers only care about the rust they can see on the outside of their frame. They grab a can of black spray paint and make the outside look beautiful. They do not realize that the structural box frames of modern trucks are completely hollow. Because of condensation and tiny drain holes, moisture and salt get trapped completely inside the enclosed steel frame rails. The frame literally rots from the inside out. You can have a perfectly black, shiny frame on the outside, and it will still snap in half when you hit a pothole. You cannot spray paint inside a hollow tube. The professional solution is internal cavity wax. This is a highly specialized, amber-colored liquid wax that comes in an aerosol can with a long 3-foot flexible wand with a 360-degree brass spray nozzle at the tip. You feed the long wand deep into the existing factory holes of your truck's frame rails. As you pull the wand out, you press the trigger. The nozzle atomizes the liquid wax, coating every single millimeter of the internal steel in a thick, waxy film. When the wax dries, it forms a soft, impenetrable barrier that permanently seals the internal steel against condensation and salt. It stops internal rot completely dead in its tracks. Cavity wax protects the inside. But what is the absolute best, undisputed master method for protecting the outside of the chassis? The ultimate Japanese shipping secret. Number 2. The lanolin fluid. Film. Secret rubberized undercoatings crack. Paint chips off. WD-40 washes away. If you want to stop rust forever, you must use a coating that never fully dries, physically creeps into microscopic crevices, and actively self-heals when scratched. The Japanese shipping industry discovered the perfect substance decades ago, lanolin. Because it never dries, it remains highly active. If a sharp rock bounces off the highway and scratches the coating, the wet lanolin literally flows back into the scratch and chemically self-heals the barrier within minutes. Furthermore, it has aggressive capillary action. It actively creeps uphill, defying gravity to seep deep into the microscopic pinch welds and bolted joints where rust always begins. It completely shuts off the oxygen supply to existing rust, stopping it from spreading, and prevents new rust from ever forming. Yes, it attracts a layer of road dust, which makes the underside of your car look dirty, but that dust actually mixes with the gel to form an even thicker, more impenetrable armor. You apply it once a year before winter, and your frame will outlast the engine, but relying on chemicals is only half the battle. The final secret is a mental shift that changes everything. Number 1. The philosophy of mechanical empathy. There are two types of people behind the wheel: operators and drivers. An operator treats a vehicle like an appliance. They get in, turn the key, and ignore the machine until a hole rots through the floorboard or a brake line bursts on the highway. They have absolutely zero connection to the physics and chemistry attacking the metal beneath their feet. They are the ones paying massive restoration bills and blaming the manufacturer for cheap steel. A true driver possesses mechanical empathy. This is the ultimate Japanese preventative secret. It means you actually pay attention to the environment. You understand that parking a salt-covered car in a heated garage is a chemical death sentence. You recognize that the damp smell in your cabin is not just a wet shoe. It is an overflowing AC drain tube slowly rotting your floor pan. Rust does not destroy a car overnight. It is a slow, methodical disease that gives you years of warning signs. A blister of paint on the door edge, a slightly damp carpet, a pile of dirt building up behind a plastic liner. The vehicles that reach 30 years old with spotless frames are not magical. They are owned by people who practice mechanical empathy. They clear the drain holes, they flush the wheel arches, they chemically convert the surface rust, and they coat the chassis in wet lanolin. If this video just saved your truck's frame, hit that subscribe button right now, and don't forget to like this video. We are building a community of drivers who refuse to be scammed by the industry. There's a video popping up on your screen right now exposing the 5 maintenance scams dealerships use to illegally void your factory warranty. Click it before you forget. I will meet you over there.